All right. Thank you for joining in on today's lesson. Today we're going to be doing homework 3-4, or the section known as point slope. All right. Now, again, looking at the title, point slope, obviously going off of 3-3, which was slope intercept. Again, something very special about that equation was that we're given the slope and y-intercept right off the bat. So again, I'm going to do a little bit of review here for you. So in 3-3, we talked about y equals mx plus b. What is nice about this equation? Well, the m is my slope, the b was my y-intercept. Now again, this is by far the nicest equation because when you think of a graph, you have your starting y-intercept, call this number, say the example there is 3, and we use our slope. Now remember, slope is change in y over change in x, or rise over run, right? So obviously from there you'd be able to use your rise and then your run, you have your new point, and obviously, bam, you have our line. So again, 3-3 is really the nicest way we can have an equation because it is really easy for us to graph. And again, we get two major keys from this. We get the y-intercept, our starting value. Remember, this is when x is equal to 0. That is very crucial. You're probably going to hear me say that in class about 1,000 more times. So again, the y-intercept is when x equals 0. Your slope is your rise over run. How you get from one point to the other using your change. All right. So in 3-4, we're talking about point slope. Now you can clearly see there's some differences, right? If you look at the formula, point slope is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Now what stand out, as you can clearly see, is wait a minute, we do have a common slope, m, but notice how our y-intercept is very different. Here, where we had a y-intercept where we can start off in the axis, we don't have that here. But we do have a point, x1 and y1. So that is how 3-4 changes. All right. So again, that is 3-4. So looking at the homework, problem number 1 says, hey student, I would like you to graph this equation. Now again, not the nice thing, but the inconvenient thing for you is that your calculator can't graph this. Right? We can't graph y minus 1 equals something. If you guys remember, to graph this in our calculator, we need it to equal y, or f of x. So what I'm going to start off by doing is I'm first going to write down my general formula for point slope. All right. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to write the equation given to me at the bottom. Give me a second. All right. So here is problem number 1. Now again, problem number 1 says, hey student, I want you to graph this equation, right? Well, remember, going off of 3-3, it's nice that we have slope and y-intercept, right? But the nice thing here is that, well, we do have slope, right? So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to notate that. My slope is -2, which if you remember is rise over run. Now remember, guys, slope is always a fraction. So we always have to convert this into a fraction. Well, how do you convert this into a fraction? Just put it over 1, right? So it's actually -2 over 1. So what does that mean? Well, remember, if we have 2 points that we're looking at, right, depending on some point, my rise means that I'm going down 2, right? So here, I'm actually going to color code this for you. It's -2 over a +1. There we go. All right. So again, my rise is -2, my run is +1. Again, notice how -2 divided by +1 is -2. So if I have a point, well, my slope says that I'm going to rise 2. Well, if you rise -2, what does that mean? That actually means that we're going down 2 units. See? So notice I went down 1, down 2, and then we're going 1 to the right. Here's my 1 gap. So notice how there you were just able to find 2 points, right? Again, this is just looking at slope again, right? This is what slope looks like graphically. Now again, notice how this is the slope. It's the easy part. But now, what is the inconvenient part of this, format? Well, the thing is that we have to look for the point. Hence why it's called point slope. So are we given a point that we can use? Yeah. Notice how here x1 and y1 actually represent x1 and y1 represent a point. Unlike before, where in 3, we had the y-intercept to start off at, right? The y-intercept, we started off on the y-axis. The point slope, they actually give me a point. Now, this is where you have to be very careful, guys. Very, very careful. Again, notice how this minus sign and that minus sign right there are part of the formula. So do not take it with you. So yes, even though this says x minus 5, notice how this minus sign is part of the equation. So this minus is the same as this one. So what is x1? Oh, x1 is actually just 5. Again, this negative sign right here is part of the equation. So notice how this negative sign, or minus, whichever one you want to say, it's already included x minus a number, x minus a number. So notice how this x1 here is the 5. Here, the y1 comes after the minus sign. Here is your minus sign. So my y1 is 1. And there it is. We have our slope, which is negative 2 over 1. And we have our point, which is 5, 1. And that is why this is called the point slope. So there it is. So I have my 2 bits of information. I have my point, 5, 1, and I have my slope, which is negative 2. So I'm going to go to, and again, the reason I did slope here first was because, again, I can tell what slope is going to be. My rise is down 2, so I went down 2, 1, 2. My run is going to be a positive 1 because it's positive, right 1. So when you go to our table, look, we just said that our point is 5, 1. So I'm going to go to 0.51, which is right there. Again, you can see it over here. So again, as you can see, my mouse is on 5, 1. Now use your slope. It was down 2. Let me zoom in for you here. It was down to 1, 2, run 1. There it is. So again, notice how I combined both portions. Here's the point that was given to me, 5, 1, and this was my slope, down 2 over 1. Save that. Check our answer. There it is. All right, let's go to problem number 2. Problem number 2. Again, same thing. They want us to graph this equation that is given to us in point slope. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is, first I'm going to write down the equation and the general form right on top of it so that everything lines up for me neatly. All right. So it's y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And again, right underneath that, I'm going to write down my new problem, y minus 3 equals 1/3 x minus 3. Now, again, while we're looking at this, it's very important to recognize this situation. Again, notice how we're going to cover 3 different types of linear equations here, which is the same linear equation, but they each give us different information. In 3, where we're given slope-intercept, which means we have the y-intercept and slope. In 3, we have the point slope. Hence, we're given a point and slope. In 3, we'll talk about something else. So again, looking at this thing here, the easy part to always recognize is slope. So my m is 1/3. Now again, this means rise over run, which means we go up 1 unit and we go right 3 units. Right? That is slope. Now we're going to go to our point portion, right? So again, our point, we're looking at the point x1, y1. Now again, I can't stress it enough. This minus sign is part of your equation. So do not bring it down. This x1 here is 3. It's not negative 3 because, again, the minus has to stay. So x1 is equal to 3. My y1 is also equal to 3 because, again, I am taking what is given. Notice how it's y minus y1. Y minus, notice how that is already the same. So what is y1? Y1 turns out to be 3. There it is. There is my point. This is my slope. And now you have everything you need to be able to graph. And again, just on a side note, right? Remember, if we're graphing, this is just a little problem here, right? My slope means that we're going up 1 and we're running 3, right? Again, I apologize for making that little diagram here, but I'm trying to stress it is up 1 unit. My rise is 1 and I'm running 3. 1, 2, 3. And again, notice how we get our little triangle setup. Rise, run. All right, and you can see here we would have 2 points. But again, I'm just doing here the graphing the slope for you so you can get an idea for what I'm doing. So there it is. We have what we need. So our point here, x1, y1 is 3, 3. So I'm going to go to my graph. Click on the line tool, first of all. I'm going to go to 3, 3. And again, my slope was 1/3. So that means that I go up 1. Notice how my mouse just went up 1 unit. And I run 3. 1, 2, 3. There it is. How much time do we have? Give me 1 second. 3 minutes. Let's go to problem number 3 here. Problem number 3 says, write an equation for the given graph. Right? Now, something very special is given here. Notice how we're actually going backwards now. They want us to come up with an equation for this line. So again, using a little bit of context clues, I'm given everything in point form. All right, look at that. That is point slope. So I first have to find my slope, and I also have to find my points, right? So looking at this, I'm first going to start out by finding the points because those are by far the easiest to find. So looking at this here, this point here, again, starting at the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I go up 1, 2, 3. So my first point, which is the right point, is 5, 3. And the second point that I'm given here is -1, -2, -3, +1, +2. I'm sorry, -1, -2, -3, +1, +2, +3, +4. So I have -3, +4. Now again, this is where I'm going to do the easy part, finding slope. Slope is by far the easiest to utilize. Look, I'm given 2 points. Change in y over change in x. We go from left to right, starting off with the rise over the run. So what was my rise? Well, to get from here to this point, notice how actually we just went down 1 unit. Look, by me doing that, notice how my mouse is already on the line where the next point is going to be at here. So my rise was actually down 1 unit. Now we look at our run. Well, our run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my run was a +8. And now I can simplify that to make everything a little bit nicer. So what did I just do? Well, this is pretty much what I just did in those previous steps. I first identified the 2 points that were used on my graph, which was 5, 3 and -3, 4. And next I found my slope. My slope, again, is the rate of change between 2 points. I used my rise over my run. My rise was down 1, so it's a -1. I went 8 units to the right, so my slope is a -1/8. So I have half the battle, right? So now, the question says, I want you to write this in point slope. Now let's do a little bit of detective work, right? We have 2 points.